The city was alive with noise, lights, and movement, but for the small alien girl huddled in the shadowed alley, it was a place of fear and neglect. Her clothes were torn, covered in grime from days of being ignored, and her large green eyes darted nervously at every passerby. Aliens and humans alike walked past her without a second glance, muttering curses or laughter as they avoided the dirty child. She had learned long ago that no one would help her, that no one would care. The world around her was harsh, brutal, and unforgiving, and the more she tried to reach out, the more it seemed to push her away. The hum of hovercrafts above and the chatter from nearby market stalls barely registered in her mind. She focused on staying hidden, curling herself tighter against the cold metal wall, her small hands clutching a tattered blanket that barely kept the chill away. Every so often, a gang of older aliens would approach, throwing crude insults, shoving her, testing to see how weak she really was. She flinched at every touch, but she had learned to keep her fear under control. Fear could be dangerous if noticed. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every passerby could turn into a threat. Survival required vigilance, and she had honed it to perfection over months of being abandoned. From the end of the alley, a human's boots echoed, a different sound from the usual clatter of the city. His stride was steady, confident, and the girl noticed it immediately. Unlike others who ignored her or laughed cruelly, he stopped. He did not sneer. He did not avert his eyes. For a moment, the chaotic noise of the city seemed to fade, leaving only the space between them. She could feel his gaze, quiet yet probing, assessing her not with judgment, but curiosity. Something in his calm made her instinctively step back, a defensive habit she had developed long ago. But he did not move closer too fast. He simply waited. The human crouched down to her level, keeping his distance but speaking in a soft, calm voice that cut through the noise. "Hey," he said simply. "You don't have to hide." The girl stared at him, suspicion and confusion warring within her. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever offered kindness without a demand in return. She shifted slightly, her knees pulled up to her chest, and whispered, "Why? Why are you looking at me?" The human smiled faintly, not mocking, not judgmental, just present. "Because someone should," he replied. "Someone should care." The girl's breath hitched. Words like that were dangerous. They invited hope, and hope had betrayed her before. She shook her head, retreating further into the shadows, but the human did not follow aggressively. He simply extended a hand, offering safety in its calm presence. "Come with me," he said. "I can help." Her mind raced. Could she trust him? Was this another trick? She had learned, painfully, that every offer of help came with strings attached. Every hand that reached out eventually struck. But something about him, his quiet confidence, the absence of menace, pulled at her curiosity. She hesitated, then, almost imperceptibly, took a cautious step forward. The human nodded, not celebrating, but acknowledging the small victory. "Good," he said softly. "We'll take it one step at a time." Together, they moved out of the alley and into the chaos of the market. The girl tried to stay small, invisible, but the human's presence gave her a strange sense of protection she had never felt before. The market was no less dangerous. Shady vendors, pickpockets, and predators lingered, but she no longer felt entirely alone. She glanced up at him, searching his face for any sign of betrayal, any hint that he would abandon her. There was none. Only steady eyes, calm and sure, as if he had faced the impossible before and could handle whatever came next. As they navigated the crowded streets, she noticed the whispers around them. Aliens muttered behind their hands, pointing at her, questioning why a human would care about someone like her. The girl shrank back at first, but the human's hand found hers, gentle but firm, and squeezed once, a small gesture that anchored her in the present. "Ignore them," he said quietly. "They don't matter." His words were simple, yet they carried a power she had never known, permission to exist without fear of judgment. For the first time in months, maybe years, she allowed herself to breathe. But safety was an illusion in the city, and the girl knew it. She could feel the eyes following them, calculating, waiting. She knew the predators would not give up so easily. The humans seemed aware of this too, scanning their surroundings with sharp eyes, adjusting their path to avoid obvious threats, always keeping her at the center of his attention. He was teaching her something without saying it: vigilance, awareness, trust, and courage. And slowly, hesitantly, she began to understand that she might survive, not just today, but beyond the walls of this city, beyond the judgment and cruelty she had known. As night fell, painting the city in shadows and neon light, the girl finally looked up fully at the human. Why me? She asked again, quieter now, a hint of vulnerability breaking through her defenses. He paused, meeting her gaze with quiet determination. Because you deserve it, he said. Because someone had to care. And because maybe, together, we can change things. The girl's heart raced, not just from fear, but from a strange, new feeling: hope. And as they disappeared into the crowded, chaotic streets, she realized that her life, the life she had thought was over before it truly began, had just taken the first, cautious step towards something extraordinary. The city's lights flickered against the night sky as the human guided the alien girl through narrow, winding alleys. Every shadow seemed alive, every corner a potential trap. She stayed close, her small hand barely brushing his as they moved, the crowded streets full of unseen eyes. The city was never truly quiet, and tonight, it felt more dangerous than ever. The girl could feel it in the tension of the air, the way even distant footsteps seemed to echo with purpose, following them, observing. She had lived most of her life hiding, but now with this human beside her, hiding felt different. It was less about fear and more about strategy, survival, and trust. He led her into a building tucked between two enormous structures, its entrance nearly invisible in the chaos of neon lights and bustling market stalls. Inside, the air was cooler, the noise of the city muted, but the feeling of being hunted did not fade. The human moved swiftly, checking doors, locks, and hidden surveillance devices as though expecting an attack at any moment. "They're already looking for you," he said quietly, almost to himself. The girl flinched, remembering the gangs and shady authorities who had thrown her into danger for sport or profit before. She had learned not to expect mercy, and yet, a tiny spark of hope flickered within her chest, daring to believe that maybe, this time, someone actually would protect her. As they settled into a small, secure room, the human began to explain what she had to know. "You're not safe out there," he said, voice calm but firm. "People think you're weak, or worthless. But they're wrong. There's a reason they want you gone, or under their control. You have a gift, something they cannot understand, and that makes you dangerous to them." The girl stared at him, eyes wide. She had always known she was different, but no one had ever told her it meant power or potential. Fear mingled with curiosity and disbelief. "Gift? What gift?" she whispered. He shook his head slightly, as if disappointed that the world had not prepared her for the truth. "Not yet. You'll see. But it's why I'm here. And why you'll have to trust me completely." Trust was a foreign concept for her. She had learned that reliance on others was weakness, that kindness often concealed betrayal. And yet, as she looked at him, she felt a sense of steadiness she had never known before. He did not rush, he did not pressure, and his eyes held no judgment. He only held focus and determination. That alone was enough to make her hesitate, to consider that maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to rely on someone else for the first time in her life. Suddenly, a faint vibration ran through the walls, a subtle hum that made the girl tense. She instinctively froze, scanning every shadow, every dark corner of the room. The human noticed instantly. "Enemy drones," he said softly, moving to the control panel. "They're small, scouting us. Nothing major yet, but they're close." The girl's heart pounded. She had faced enemies before, but nothing like this, a persistent, invisible presence that could strike without warning. She watched as the human manipulated the system, rerouting energy, blocking surveillance signals, and creating temporary safety measures. Every move was precise, deliberate, and utterly calm. He was teaching her silently that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was action in spite of it. Hours passed, filled with tense silence punctuated by the occasional alert. The girl began to notice subtle patterns in the drone's movements, her instincts sharpening. She realized she could sense things the human didn't immediately see, the shifts in pressure, the faint hums, the way the building seemed to respond to the intruders. Hesitantly, she mentioned it. "I think I can feel them coming," she said. The human's eyes narrowed, and a flicker of surprise crossed his face. "You're faster than I expected," he said. "Good. That instinct might save us if they attack directly." Her chest tightened with a mix of fear and pride. For the first time, her difference, the thing that had made everyone else dismiss her, felt like a strength rather than a curse. Then, the warning alarms blared. Red lights flashed along the walls. The girl's breath hitched, but the human remained steady, issuing orders and moving with calm precision. "Stay close. Watch and learn. We're going to show them they underestimated us." Her heart raced as the first shadows of enemy scouts appeared outside the reinforced walls. The tension was unbearable, every second stretching as she realized the danger was no longer abstract, it was here, real and imminent. But beside her, the human stood unwavering, a shield of determination and strength she could almost feel radiating through him. As the drones began probing the building's defenses, the girl instinctively reached out, focusing on the subtle energy she could sense around them. It was faint at first, barely noticeable, but enough to redirect a small drone away from their entrance. The human noticed, eyes widening slightly. "You're learning fast," he said, not mocking, but impressed. The girl felt a spark of hope ignite. Perhaps she could survive this, perhaps she could be more than the outcast the world had cast her as. But the city outside was relentless. The human and the girl could not let their guard down, not for a second. Every shadow, every sound, every flicker of movement could be an enemy waiting to strike. And yet, for the first time in her life, the girl felt something she had never known before. Trust, courage, and a fragile, flickering hope that maybe, together, they could outlast the hidden threats of a cruel galaxy. The hidden room was quiet now, almost deceptively calm. The girl had spent hours observing, learning from the human's movements, his calm precision, and his quiet strategies for staying safe. She was beginning to feel a strange sense of purpose, a realization that she was not just hiding but preparing. And yet, despite the safety, a tension hung in the air, subtle but unrelenting. She could feel it in her chest, in the tiny prickles on her skin, in the way even the hum of machinery seemed heavier tonight. Danger was coming, and she knew it. Without warning, a sudden vibration shook the walls, a deep, resonant pulse that rattled her teeth and made her flinch. The human's head snapped toward the console, eyes narrowing. "They're testing us," he said, voice steady but sharp. "Not yet full attack. Small probes. Watching, waiting." Her heart raced. She had faced threats before, but these were different, organized, intelligent, relentless. The drones weren't just random enemies, they were scouts, trying to measure her reactions, looking for weaknesses. And now, she realized, they were forcing her to act. A sudden alarm pierced the air, red lights flashing violently across the room. The first scout drone crashed through a partially weakened wall, its mechanical claws snapping toward them. The human moved instantly, pulling the girl behind him and raising a small energy shield. Sparks flew as the claws met the barrier, the metallic screech ringing in her ears. She froze for a moment, eyes wide with fear, but then instinct took over. She had felt the energy surrounding the drones, the subtle vibration of their engines. Without thinking, she reached out, focusing on the sensation, and felt a strange connection, like a thread she could tug to push them away. The drone jerked violently to the side, missing their position entirely. The human's eyes widened in surprise. "You did that?" he asked, incredulous but composed. She nodded, trembling, realizing for the first time that she possessed something powerful, something that had been dormant, ignored, or perhaps feared by those who had cast her aside. Fear mixed with exhilaration as she began to test the boundaries of her newfound ability, nudging the next probe away with subtle control, guiding it without touching, almost like a conductor directing a symphony of chaos. The scouts kept coming, faster and more organized now, sensing that this human and the girl were not as weak as they had assumed. But with every movement, every pulse of focus, the girl grew more confident. The human adapted quickly, coordinating with her newfound skill, giving subtle directions while defending and countering attacks. Together, they were a force, a combination of instinct, intelligence, and emerging power that the enemy had never anticipated. Between attacks, the girl realized something else. She wasn't just reacting, she was thinking strategically. She guided drones toward walls that could trap them, toward weak structural points that could collapse under their weight. The human noticed, a rare smile breaking across his usually calm face. "You're thinking like a warrior," he said quietly. "You're learning fast, faster than I expected." The girl's chest swelled with a mixture of pride and disbelief. She had always been treated as fragile, disposable, useless. And now, in the chaos of survival, she realized she was far from that. She had power, intelligence, and skill, enough to defy those who had scorned her. The battle reached a peak when a larger drone, more heavily armored and faster than the scouts, entered the room. It moved like a predator, calculating and precise, and the girl felt the familiar prickling of danger. Her instinct screamed to flee, but she remembered the human's guidance, the trust he had placed in her. She focused, steadying her breathing, and reached out with the energy she now controlled. The drone faltered, jerking unexpectedly, then collided with a wall she had predicted. Sparks and debris rained down, and the girl felt a rush of triumph unlike anything she had experienced before. When the last drone fell, the room was silent once more. The human exhaled slowly, lowering his guard, and turned to her with a look of genuine pride. "You did it," he said. "You passed the first test. But remember, this is only the beginning. The galaxy won't wait. They will come again, and next time, it will be worse." The girl's eyes were wide, not with fear, but with understanding and determination. She had survived, not by hiding, not by being ignored, but by stepping into her power, by trusting herself and the human who had chosen to stand with her. For the first time, she realized that being different was not a curse, it was a gift. The very thing that had made everyone else avoid her, mock her, or discard her, was now the key to her survival and their victory. And standing there, beside the human who had believed in her when no one else would, she understood something profound. She would no longer be anyone's victim. She would choose her own destiny, shape her own future, and face the galaxy on her terms. The human reached out, placing a firm, reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Rest now," he said softly. "Tomorrow, we prepare. Tomorrow, we take the next step. You're ready, but the galaxy is not ready for you yet." And in that quiet moment, amidst the debris and dim light of the hidden room, the girl smiled, small, but full of a strength she had never known she possessed. A storm was coming, and she would face it, unbowed, unstoppable, and alive. The hidden refuge was not much to look at from the outside, a small, inconspicuous building tucked between jagged cliffs on the edge of the city. From within, however, it was a sanctuary, calm, organized, and shielded from the chaos that roared beyond its walls. The human led the alien girl inside, moving swiftly, his eyes constantly scanning for threats even as they crossed the threshold. She followed closely, her small steps careful and deliberate, her mind still racing from the intensity of the test she had faced just hours ago. Though the drones had been defeated, she understood that victory was only temporary. The city, the gangs, and the authorities would not rest. They would hunt again, and next time, she might not be so lucky. Inside, the air was warm and quiet, carrying the faint hum of energy systems that powered security measures and basic life support. The human gestured toward a corner where a small cot had been prepared, along with a stack of clean blankets. "Rest here for a moment," he said softly. "We'll need your strength later." The girl hesitated, unused to such care, but the fatigue from the day's events won over her suspicion. She sank onto the cot, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders, feeling its unfamiliar comfort. As she looked around, she realized how different this place was from the alleys and streets where she had survived for so long. Here, there were no predators watching, no whispered insults, no constant need to hide. Here, she could breathe, even if only for a little while. The human moved to a console along the wall, tapping rapidly, checking readings and monitoring the surroundings. He glanced at her without looking directly, as if acknowledging her presence while focusing on the bigger picture. "We're safe for now," he said. "But that won't last. They'll keep coming. You need to learn, not just fight. You need to understand, to be ready for what's next." The girl watched him, her curiosity piqued. Understanding, she realized, was more than survival. It was preparation, strategy, and insight. She had survived by instinct before, but instinct alone would not keep her alive against intelligent, relentless enemies. She needed guidance, and somehow, she felt she could trust him to provide it. Over the next few hours, the human taught her small lessons, showing her how to read the subtle shifts in energy and movement around them. He demonstrated defensive techniques and shared knowledge about the drone's patterns, their weaknesses, and how to anticipate attacks. At first, she was overwhelmed, her mind racing to absorb everything. But slowly, she began to understand, to feel the rhythm of danger, the pulse of threat, and the ways she could influence outcomes without brute force. Her confidence grew with each small success, and the human noticed, offering quiet encouragement rather than praise that might have felt hollow. Despite the relative calm, tension lingered. Every so often, a faint vibration, a distant hum, or the shadow of movement outside the reinforced walls reminded them that the world beyond this refuge was still dangerous. The girl could feel it, an instinct honed from years of neglect and fear. Yet now, alongside the human, that instinct was no longer just for survival. It became a tool, a weapon of awareness and insight. She began to anticipate, to plan, to act before threats reached them. And the human, observing her growth, allowed her to make decisions, letting her mistakes teach her lessons rather than punishing them. By nightfall, the refuge felt more like a home than a hiding place. The girl sat on a small stool, hands resting on her knees, her eyes bright with understanding and quiet determination. She had learned much, yet she knew the lessons were only beginning. The human sat nearby, quietly maintaining systems and scanning for threats, a constant reminder that vigilance never ended. He spoke softly, almost to himself, as if testing her understanding. "You're stronger than you think. But strength alone won't save you. You'll need courage, wit, and patience. And you'll need to trust yourself. And me." The girl's heart thumped in agreement, a feeling unfamiliar but welcome. Trust, hope, and determination. Outside, the city continued its relentless chaos, unaware that two of its most underestimated residents were plotting, learning, and preparing. The girl realized, with a mixture of fear and exhilaration, that she was no longer simply a victim of circumstance. She was becoming a participant, an actor in her own story, capable of influencing the world rather than fleeing from it. And with the human at her side, someone who had chosen to believe in her when everyone else had dismissed her, she felt something she had never experienced, the possibility of real change. As they settled in for the night, the girl stared out at the distant city lights, neon reflections shimmering against the dark skyline. Danger was still out there, waiting, but she no longer felt powerless. She had a place to regroup, to learn, and to prepare. And more importantly, she had someone who would stand beside her, unshaken, unyielding, and ready to face whatever threats the galaxy could throw at them. For the first time in her life, she felt ready, not just to survive, but to fight, to act, and to change her destiny. The night was broken by the sharp, mechanical whir of approaching drones, their red scanning lights slicing through the dark. The girl's heart pounded as she leapt to her feet, instinct kicking in before fear could take control. The human had already moved into position, calm but alert, scanning the perimeter with precise, practiced movements. The refuge, which had felt like a sanctuary only hours before, now felt fragile, as if the slightest misstep could shatter the temporary safety they had built. She gripped her hands, feeling the energy she had learned to control pulse faintly within her, ready to be unleashed. The first wave of attackers hit without warning. Drones smashed against the reinforced walls, claws snapping and energy beams flaring. Sparks erupted across the room as the human deflected the initial strikes, moving with a fluid precision that she had grown to admire. She followed instinctively, sending pulses of energy to divert drones away from vulnerable spots, guiding them into traps the human had prepared. Every movement was tense, deliberate, and dangerous. She could feel the stakes in every beat of her heart. Failure meant capture, and capture could mean the end of everything she had survived for. As the battle raged, the girl began to trust her own instincts more. She anticipated the drone's movements, predicting their attacks before they happened, and felt a strange exhilaration in her newfound power. The human noticed immediately, issuing subtle commands and moving to protect her when needed, but allowing her the space to act on her own. "Good," he said in a quiet tone, almost a whisper, as a drone collapsed after her intervention. "You're faster, smarter, and stronger than you think." Pride surged within her, tempered by the awareness of the danger still pressing in from all sides. The attack escalated. A larger, more heavily armored drone broke through the outer defenses, moving with terrifying speed and precision. The girl's pulse raced as the human positioned himself strategically, but this time, he gave her a direct command. "Now it's your turn. Stop it." Fear and doubt crashed over her, but she took a deep breath, focusing on the energy within, the subtle currents she could sense around the machine. Tentatively at first, she extended her will, feeling the drone's movements falter. Sparks flew as it collided with the wall she had predicted, its systems temporarily scrambled. The human's eyes widened in surprise, but he did not intervene, he trusted her to finish what she had started. With each strike, each pulse of energy, the girl grew more confident, her fear transforming into determination. She realized that she was not simply defending herself, she was actively shaping the battlefield, turning the attacker's own movements against them. The human coordinated with her, using both strategy and intuition, creating a seamless partnership that the drones could not anticipate. Together, they moved as one, a combination of human cunning and alien ability that was both beautiful and terrifying. Despite their success, the battle was far from over. More drones arrived, faster and more organized than before, their tactics clearly adapting to the girl's abilities. She felt the pressure in every fiber of her being, the weight of responsibility pressing down, but she refused to falter. She had come too far to be a victim now. She had power, knowledge, and a human who trusted her completely. And in that trust, she found a well of courage that allowed her to keep moving, to keep fighting, and to protect the fragile refuge they had claimed as their own. Finally, after what felt like hours, the last of the drones was destroyed or incapacitated. Silence fell over the refuge, broken only by the hum of the human systems and their labored breathing. The girl sank to her knees, exhausted but exhilarated, realizing the full extent of what she had accomplished. The human approached, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "This was your first real test, and you passed. But remember, this is only the beginning. They will come again. And next time, you must be ready for even more." The girl looked at him, a mix of pride, fear, and determination shining in her eyes. She had faced the enemy and survived, but more importantly, she had discovered something within herself, strength, skill, and courage she had never known. The battle had changed her. She was no longer simply the dirty, alien girl, abandoned and dismissed by everyone. She was a force to be reckoned with, and with the human at her side, she felt ready to face anything the galaxy could throw at them. As they began assessing the refuge for damage and preparing for the inevitable next attack, the girl allowed herself a small, private smile. The city outside remained relentless, its chaos undiminished, but she had discovered that she could influence it, control it, even in the smallest ways. And for the first time, she understood that she was not powerless. She was alive, capable, and ready. The war was far from over, but she had taken the first step from victim to warrior. And standing beside the human who had chosen to believe in her, she knew one thing for certain. Together, they could survive anything. The first rays of light crept through the reinforced windows, illuminating the refuge in a soft, golden glow. For the first time in what felt like forever, the alien girl allowed herself to simply breathe. The night's battle had left its mark, the walls were scorched, sparks still occasionally flickered from damaged panels, and the hum of machinery carried the rhythm of recent chaos. But the girl did not feel fear now. She felt something far stronger, triumph. She had survived, she had fought, and she had discovered the depths of her own power. She was no longer just a dirty, alien girl abandoned by the galaxy. She was a warrior, a survivor, and someone capable of shaping her own destiny. The human stood beside her, scanning the exterior one last time before turning to face her. "You've grown," he said, voice quiet but filled with pride. "Stronger, faster, smarter, and ready for whatever comes next. She nodded, the words settling within her. He had not only guided her but believed in her when no one else would. And that belief, that unwavering trust, had transformed her. The bond between them had become more than survival. It was a partnership, forged in fire, fear, and the relentless challenges of a galaxy that had never cared for her before. They spent the morning assessing the refuge, repairing the damages, and preparing for any future threats. The girl moved with confidence now, not timidly, not in hiding, but with purpose. Each task, each decision, was a small demonstration of her growth. She could feel the energy around her, a faint but constant pulse of her own making, and it no longer frightened her. It was part of her, a tool, a gift, and she had learned to wield it with precision and care. The human watched her closely, offering guidance when needed, but allowing her to take the lead whenever possible. And she thrived in that trust, blossoming into the strength she had never known existed within her. By midday, the city outside was alive as always, indifferent to the struggles of two beings who had defied expectation. Yet the girl felt no fear. She had faced predators, drones, and relentless attacks, and survived. She had discovered courage, control, and her own unique power. The world might still see her as fragile, as dirty, as someone to be ignored or mocked, but she knew the truth. She was capable, resilient, and unstoppable when she chose to act. And alongside the human who had stood beside her, she knew they could face any challenge, any enemy, and any force that dared to threaten them. The human approached her, holding a small device that displayed movement across the city. "The threats will come again," he said, "but now we're ready. Not just to survive but to fight back. To protect ourselves and anyone else who cannot defend themselves." The girl nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She was no longer a victim waiting for rescue. She was an active participant in her own story, capable of defending herself and shaping the events around her. She had power, skill, and determination, and she knew how to use them. As they prepared to leave the refuge, stepping cautiously into the city streets, the girl allowed herself a small smile. The path ahead was uncertain, full of danger, but also full of possibility. She had discovered that courage was not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. She had learned that trust could be a source of strength rather than weakness. And she had realized that her unique abilities, once seen as a curse, were in fact the key to survival, influence, and perhaps even justice in a galaxy that had forgotten her. The sunlight reflected off the distant towers, glinting like distant stars, and the girl felt a sense of purpose settle deep within her chest. The human beside her was not just an ally, he was a partner, a teacher, and a friend who had chosen to see her for what she truly was. And for the first time in her life, she believed in a future that was hers to shape. The city, the galaxy, the endless challenges that waited beyond the horizon, they no longer intimidated her. She had survived. She had grown. She had become someone who could face anything. As they walked forward together, leaving the refuge behind, the girl realized that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of danger and wonder alike. But she was no longer powerless, no longer abandoned, no longer afraid. She was alive, capable, and unstoppable. And with the human who had believed in her standing beside her, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, and nothing, not even the galaxy itself, could break them.